Now let me show you a practical application of this truth. Back in the ancient wisdom days, the days of wisdom schools, this practice was known, and to this day it is practiced by some organizations. Where it is understandingly practiced, it is a very powerful influence. Where two or more are gathered together in my name, there am I. Of course, one with God is a majority, that's true. But it is likewise true that where there are two or more, that the united consciousness brings forth great fruitage. Now, we are a body of students who have met together without a single selfish motive, because there is nothing to be gotten here that would come under the heading of self-interest or selfishness. One cannot gain an understanding of God for a selfish motive. One cannot gain an understanding of God or come together to unite in God consciousness for a selfish motive, or for a dishonest one, or for an erroneous one. Therefore, to come together as we are in the consciousness of God awareness, or seeking God realization, or attaining God realization, our motive is pure. And this means that our prayer is effective. Now, as we unite here for only this one purpose of witnessing God in action, of bearing witness to God's grace, to beholding God, to attaining God, what happens is that we are a complete, united, pure consciousness. This itself is God. Therefore, we are in the presence of God. And where God is, there is fulfillment. Now this not only is a prayer or meditation that will benefit all of us who are gathered here, but remember that we exist not in bodies or places but in consciousness. Everyone, any place on the face of this globe who is reaching out for God realization is right here where we are, receiving the benefit of God's presence. Remember that. They may not be true students. They need not be true students. They might be an aviator in trouble. They might be someone on the road in trouble. Anyone reaching out for the realization or the help of God, anyone reaching out to attain the presence of God, is automatically here where we are, because we are in the presence of God. We are the presence of God in expression, but only for one reason. Our consciousness is unconditioned. It is not seeking any object. Think of this. We are not here seeking money. We are not seeking fame. We are not seeking anything that could be objectified. We are seeking only one thing: God attainment or spiritual realization. And therefore, we present to this world pure consciousness, and pure consciousness is God. Therefore, God being omnipresent, everyone reaching for God is here where we are, and they are benefiting by this. Now, these organizations of old, and a few that I know about today, have a practice of this nature. They have a particular room about which each one of them knows, and each day at a certain hour, these people close their eyes and feel themselves in the presence or in the actual room itself. Why this particular room? Because this room is kept pure. No one may enter this room except in unselfish devotion. No one may enter this room for any other purpose than God realization. And as those who are active in that particular work go there occasionally, and no one else being permitted in there, not even to clean, you can understand that it presents not a room that is clean, but a consciousness that is clean, and those who reach toward it reach that purified consciousness, that consciousness that has no object, no purpose other than benediction. And out of that daily inspiration, they receive of this hidden manna, this hidden strength, this hidden health, this hidden supply. Now actually, it isn't necessary to have a room of that kind. It merely helps us in localizing our thought for the moment. But it isn't necessary. We can ourselves make of our consciousness a holy temple, which indeed, in its pure estate, it is. Now, even your body is the temple of God, but more so your consciousness. As you would maintain your consciousness on the level of spiritual unselfedness, that means living your life in the constant prayerful attitude of being a blessing, being a benediction, being a center, a lodge room, your consciousness being a holy place. And as you would live in that and not permit any selfishness, any evil to enter your consciousness would be as pure as what we call heaven. And anyone reaching to your consciousness would receive healing, blessing, benediction. But remember, your consciousness already is this temple of God. That's the word we'll use, temple. Your consciousness is the temple of God, but you soil it with selfishness. We soil it with selfishness, with self-interest, instead of maintaining it as purely as we can in the light of truth. In other words, the closest we come to it, of course, is the Sermon on the Mount and the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. More especially, and this has been brought out in a previous class, never malpractice. And never malpractice means never bear false witness. To call any individual a human being is to bear false witness. To sit in judgment on any human being is to bear false witness. To hold them in bondage to their sins of the past or present is to bear false witness. We have to live in a constant attitude of, neither do I condemn thee, go and sin no more. Leaving it with them themselves, whether they want to sin and be punished, that's not your affair. Your affair is to live always in the, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Neither do I condemn thee. Thy sins be forgiven thee. I loose thee and let thee go. I release thee from any debt to me, to any obligation to me. I release thee from any responsibility or blame for your actions of the past or present. In other words, I am living in a constant attitude of forgiveness, of non-condemnation, no condemnation, no criticism, no judgment. How does this apply in our human experience when we're called upon to read the newspapers and read of these evil doings? We're not fools. We know what the human world is doing. Therefore, we are not saying they're not doing it. We're not walking around foolishly saying, you're God's perfect child, in the face of their conduct. But we are saying that insofar as I am concerned, thy sins be forgiven thee. My prayer is that you find God's grace. Whoever you are, whatever your crime, my prayer is that you find the peace that passeth understanding, that your consciousness be purified, so that even though your sins are scarlet, in this moment of awakening, you'll be pure as, you'll be white as snow. And so in recognizing, of course, all of the human evil that we see, and regretting it, and making continuous efforts to eradicate it, nevertheless, as this temple of God, which we are, we must keep the temple clean, and we do that by not bearing false witness. Of course, as one has reached even a small measure of the spiritual consciousness, one has lost the capacity, personally, to sin in what the ways, the major ways the world calls sin. We're all sinning in some degree. But they are not, on the spiritual path, the major sins of the world. And these minor ones are not ours by choice, but as Paul saw them. Not that I sin or want to sin, but I still note a sense of sin in me. In other words, I have not yet overcome completely my humanhood. But this does not soil the temple which I am. Because, remember, it is motive that counts. It is not the fact that we may not in one instant find full purification. We are living by our motives, and our motives constitute the life we lead. Now, if we are one, and we are the majority, we can take our brief period of meditation for the realization that I am the temple of God. My consciousness is the temple of God, and nothing can enter my consciousness that defileth or maketh a lie, for I am seeking nothing. I am realizing God's presence, but I am asking for nothing. There is no personal sense in my consciousness. I am not desiring anything. I am not desiring anyone. I am living within myself in the realization of God's presence, of God's grace, of God's benediction. We are taught that we must die daily, die to ourselves. And there comes a period when we die, when life is no more lived for me. Life is just being lived for whatever purpose I may be called upon to perform. And it makes no difference whether in the business world or the artistic world, we can still be called on for whatever it is that is our natural function, and yet perform everything in the realization that as the temple of God, I am walking the earth. And I am only the temple of God in the absence of personal desire, self-will, greed, lust, anger, all of these things that constitute mortality. It sounds more difficult than it is because there is a law working in our inner parts. There is a law working in our consciousness, which is a law of purification. We cannot purify ourselves, but the law can, the law of the presence of God. And it functions in our absence of selfedness or selfishness. It functions in this empty room devoid of self, room devoid of self-interest. Now, of course, it may not be that we can maintain this complete purity for 24 hours of the day, although ultimately it becomes in great measure the life we live. But for a long, long time we may not attain that complete purity where we can say, I know that my consciousness is the temple of God because there is no self there. It is completely empty of self, self-desire, self-gain, self-will. But we can maintain it for periods of 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, and we can do that as many times a day as we are willing to do it. We can set ourselves apart and realize my consciousness now is the temple of God. There is absent from this temple all self-interest, self-desire. I am here only as a transparency for the Spirit of God. I am here only that all in the world who are seeking light may find entrance to my consciousness and be illumined. I am here only for one purpose, that the sick, the sinner, the dying, who are reaching out for life, who are reaching out for forgiveness, who are reaching out for health, may find entrance into this tabernacle, which I am, and from which all sense of self is absent, so that the benediction, which is the grace of God, may touch all who enter here. And in that emptiness, the world finds its entrance into your consciousness and is dissolved. And in the end, the Master says, I have overcome the world. Why? I am pure. Purity does not consist, as we are taught, in just being moral or just being honest. This is not purity. Purity is an absence of self. Purity, the purity which is spiritual, is an absence of personal desire, personal ambition, personal hope. It is really what we have described in the past as abandon hope, all ye who enter here. As you enter the tabernacle of God, have no hope, have no desire, in fact, don't even be there. Just let your consciousness be as devoid of you as it can be. Let it be an emptiness. Let it be a holy tabernacle. Let it be an ark of the covenant. Let it have no person. And then you really can say, I am the temple of God. My body is the temple of God. My consciousness is the temple of God. My soul is the temple of God. And all who enter here find surcease from the world, find rest. My consciousness is the house of refuge. Even the sinner can enter here and not be apprehended. In this sanctuary which I am, in this sanctuary which I am, let the sinner find peace. Let the thirsty find drink. Let the hungry find meat. Let the sick find health. Let the dead find life in this sanctuary which I am, this holy temple where I am not, but I am. You see, we cannot live as mortals and as immortals. We must die to mortality on the spiritual path. Now, once we have learned that there is no far-off God to whom we must sacrifice, to whom we must tithe, to whom we must give, we will know then that our tithing, our giving, our sharing is not for a God. It is our mode of expressing gratitude for God's gift and God's grace to us. Our giving has no seeking of a return. There is no giving of 10% to get 90%. There is no idea in giving except that. And watch this. We are only children of God as our life is an expression of good without a single trace of desire for a return. On the human plane, when we do good for anyone, we look to them for good in return. We don't always get it. And the reason is, it isn't a natural or normal relationship. Our giving should be from the standpoint of we are the temple of God, and it is God's giving through us. It is God sharing through us. God asks no return any more than a mother asks a return of a child. A mother gives, sacrifice. Never asks the child for a return, because it isn't in the nature of motherhood to want something back. It is in the nature of motherhood to flow, give, share. So it is the motherhood which is God. What we do, we do. But then there is no personal self seeking a reward. And that is why the Master taught us that when we pray to pray in secret, when we give our benevolences to give in secret. Why? There must be no selfhood around to claim credit. There must be no selfhood around to claim praise. There must be no selfhood around to receive thanks. Yes, the other person, for the sake of their own salvation, must express gratitude and thanks and recognition and acknowledgement, but not for our sake. In the same way, we must express joy, peace, gratitude, sharing, but not for the other fellow, only as a mode and means of God flowing through us. Now, we are at this place where this room becomes a temple of God. But can it? No. A room cannot be a temple of God. Only I can be a temple of God. Only consciousness can be a temple of God. And we make this room holy by being here in an attitude of this emptiness, this vacuum, this inner sanctuary temple which I am. Then, just as the Master's robe took on spiritual qualities and became the means whereby the woman who pressed through and touched the robe was healed, so can people enter a room of this kind after we have left and find healing and comforting and forgiveness to the same extent that they could if they entered an empty church where there was a minister, a priest, a rabbi of true spiritual dignity. Any church that is graced by a minister, priest, or rabbi of true spiritual grace becomes a sanctuary where anyone may enter and find peace or healing, avenues of supply. Anything can happen because the very room takes on the atmosphere of the consciousness of those responsible. This is coming forth tonight for this reason. Throughout the United States and Canada, throughout England and Holland and Germany and Switzerland and Sweden, throughout Africa and Australia and New Zealand, and perhaps a few other places that I haven't mentioned, there are groups of Infinite Way students who meet. Small groups, mostly, here and there a large group, some daily, some weekly, but they meet for only one purpose. They're either reading these writings or hearing these classes on tape, and therefore they are meeting as the temple of God. They are meeting only to abide in God realization, in God consciousness. They are meeting only for the purpose of being a blessing or a benediction. They have no other motive in doing it. There is no possibility of self-gain or selfish gain through such an activity or through such meetings. Many people have these books or these tapes in their homes. If they read, if they listen, it must be as the temple of God, because also they are doing it for no selfish purpose. They are doing it to attain God realization, and they do. Then, let it be known that wherever you are, as one being the majority, or wherever you are, two or more gathered together in the name of this message of the Infinite Way, for the purpose of God realization, let it be remembered that you are the temple of God, and God is in his temple, and everyone who reaches to that temple, or everyone who reaches for the grace of God, reaches that temple and finds peace within you, finds rest, finds forgiveness, because you have no censure within your consciousness. You have no condemnation, no criticism. You are living as the Master lived. Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more, lest the worst thing come upon thee. Not because I will it or God wills it, but because the karmic law operates. And what you do to another, you are doing to yourself. But from this standpoint, and as of this moment, thy sins be forgiven thee. Thou art not in condemnation. Thou art not under criticism. And so it is. We bear no false witness, then we are the temple of God. As we go into our business activities, our professional activities, if we go in this spirit, that our consciousness is a place of benediction for all who touch us, even if they come to us for a business purpose or a professional purpose or artistic purpose, they must be blessed. It all depends on whether we are going to them to get or whether we are going to them to give and to share and to multiply. That we may benefit by it is not wrong, because our benefiting by it is but the reflex action of the good that pours forth through us. In other words, love is reflected in love, and love does return where love is. The bread we cast upon the water returns unto us. Our mission tonight is the realization that God constitutes our consciousness. Therefore, our consciousness is the temple of God, and nothing finds entrance into our consciousness that defileth or maketh a lie. And the reason is, my personal self is not there. The self-seeking is not there. It is absent. The self-seeker isn't there. In this moment of holiness, I alone am here. The Spirit of God alone is here. The light of God alone is here. And it is here as a benediction, as a blessing. And do you see how The self is absent from the body. The self is absent from the mind. And we are a pure temple or sanctuary. Now, see the difference as you go about your work, realizing now that you don't have to pray to God for anything, that you don't have to sacrifice to get something, that you don't have to plead and implore with God to do something. Now, you have set the law of God, the presence of God, in operation within you by your absence from the body, by your absence from the mind, and letting your consciousness be the pure center of God. It is as if you made of your consciousness a lodge room, a temple, a church, and you were determined that nothing would enter that church that defileth or maketh a lie. And remember this, invite all the sinners in, because they won't defile it or make a lie. Invite all the poor in, because they won't impoverish it. The only evil that could enter that sanctuary is our personal self alone. Everyone else that comes seeking God's grace. They're not seeking self or selfishness. The sinner comes seeking sanctuary, forgiveness, cleansing. The sick come seeking the presence of God for healing. No one brings any selfishness into my consciousness unless I permit my self-desire, my self-interest, my self-gain. Then I soil the temple which I am. Closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. That is how close to us God is. And God becomes most apparent to us, most manifest in our experience as we are purified of desire. Now, in one of the writings you will find that a chapter on that very subject of desirelessness. And you will also find a statement that the only sin is desire. The greatest sin is desire, because this means personal self, which should have been dead long ago, isn't quite extinct. In the absence of personal sense, there is no desire. There is a tabernacling with God and a tabernacling with the children of God. There is a communing with God. And there's no desire in that, because this very communion is a sense of fulfillment. First, it fulfills us within with an inner peace, an inner joy, an inner awareness of this hidden manna. And then afterward, as we come out of it, we find that this inner tabernacling, this inner communion, begins to feed us in the external, supply us, support us, care for us, companion with us. Nothing of a real good nature will take place in our experience until it first takes place within us. So it is then that fulfillment itself cannot come to the outer experience until fulfillment has come in the inner experience. And fulfillment comes through tabernacling with that Spirit of God which I am. This absence of self from the temple. Why do we live? And if we answer humanly, there are thousands of answers, and every one of them is a reason why we know sin, disease, death, lack, and limitation. But if we answer, why do I live? With this, I live as the temple of God. I live as a sanctuary for all mankind. I live as an instrument through which God is made evident on earth. I live as a transparency through which God may function. I live, well, as the sun and the moon and the stars and the earth. The heavens declare the glory of God, the earth showeth forth his handiwork, and so do I live to show forth that God's grace is any man's sufficiency. God's grace is any man's sufficiency. And I live for this purpose. There's no gain in that. There's no self in that. There's no desire. And yet, because of that, there is fulfillment. And we are filled full of every needful thing, person, companion, whatever it may be that fulfills us on earth, takes place because we live as fulfillment to others, because we live as fulfillment of God, as we live as that place in which God is met. We are that sanctuary in which the world reaches and finds the presence of God. Now, as you read the Master, you will understand the words tabernacle, temple, sanctuary. I am. Who do men say that I am? And the answer is wrong. Whom do ye say that I am? Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. How can this be? Because Christ was evident as Jesus, but there was no Jesus around. Jesus wasn't seeking anything, asking for anything, wanting anything, not even recognition or praise or homage. Why callest thou me good? There is but one good, the Father that sent me, the Father in heaven. If I speak of myself, I bear witness to a lie. There was no Jesus. There was only Christ, the Son of God, the healer, the raiser from the dead, the benediction, the tabernacle, the temple of God. So it is that one day we will live that way, even as now we are starting to live that way, even with the tiny measure of Christhood that we can manifest, even in 5 minutes that we may steal away and empty ourselves of ourselves and let ourselves become momentarily the temple of God, that place to which the world can reach out and find sanctuary. Let us do this for 5 minutes, and there is no Joel, there is only Christ, even for that 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, we are living as the temple of God. And never think that after that 5 minutes, we will ever again be quite as mortal as we were before, or quite as venal, or quite as selfish, or quite as bigoted, or quite as envious, or quite as vengeful. No, no, no. Even that 5 minutes of daily purity will begin to cleanse the temple which I am. And now you will understand better, as you read the writings, why it is repeated so often that here where I am, God is. That I and the Father are one, and all that the Father hath is mine. There is always within me this recognition of God, God as fulfillment, God as the life, God as the light. And the more that this is brought to conscious remembrance, the less of Joel sticks around, and that becomes the temple, which is the infinite way. That becomes the sanctuary, which is the infinite way. For the infinite way is but a message of the purity of individual consciousness when it is unconditioned by personal self. The story of the infinite way is the story of individual consciousness. How many chapters do we have? How many tapes do we have on the subject of God as individual consciousness? Then individual consciousness is pure. Individual consciousness is the healer, the Messiah. But only as we take from consciousness this sense of personal selfhood. And this is an act that we perform. Choose ye this day whether you will live as personal sense or whether you will live as Christ. And then, don't judge yourself too harshly. Don't be too critical of yourself as you find yourself failing to live up to that highest which you have realized. But be like Paul, who remembers that he's forgetting those things which are past and only looking forward to the higher and higher attainment of the Christ selfhood, which is our true identity, our spirit, and our life. And it says, "Come unto me, all ye that are heavy laden." And here we have our activity as we take the period for this temple meditation and are empty of self, and then we invite the world, "Come unto me, all ye that are heavy laden." Drop your burdens here. Here there is sanctuary. Here you will find no criticism, no judgment, but you will find forgiveness. "Father, forgive them, they know not what they do." Open their eyes that they may see. Open their ears that they may hear. Father, be a light unto those who enter this temple. Be the bread and the meat and the wine and the water. Be the joy. Be the renewal. "Come all ye that labor, all ye that are heavy laden. I, the Spirit of God within me, gives you rest, security, safety, peace, and joy. And more than all else, I am come that ye might have life, and that ye might have life more abundant." This I, the Spirit of God in me, is here for the one purpose, that ye who look unto me might find this life, and life more abundant. "And I will be with thee unto the end of the world." And in this peace we learn that we have no need external to ourselves, for thy grace is my sufficiency. And then, as we come out into the world, we find that the inner spiritual grace has translated itself into terms of those things needful for our every experience. No good thing is withholden from us. No good thing is withheld from us. And then finally, from deep down within, there comes these words, "My peace. My peace give I unto thee. Not as the world giveth, but my peace." And so it is. Thank you.